Hello, everyone. I am Deshauna Barber, CEO of Service Women's Action Network. And today we are speaking to the Protect Our Defenders founder and executive chair, Nancy Parrish. Before we go into your organization, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Well, it's good to be with you today, Deshauna. Well, I grew up in Central Florida. I'm married. I have kids and grandkids. My professional career was in public affairs and consulting. And, my first real job was working for the Florida legislature. I gained a lot of insights and knowledge about how and why laws are made and how they can advantage or disadvantage people. And it was a real life lesson.
That's wonderful. Even when we had a chance to actually talk and really just dive into your background, even prior to this conversation, I think it's so great. Even when you look at Nancy's bio, you can really see that you have a heart for like advocacy. You have a heart for even just policy and making sure that we're giving back to the community. And I think in the nonprofit space, there has to be a love for giving back. Because it can come with its ups and downs. So I really do love that about your background and what it is that you do at Protect Our Defenders. But like I was saying, you have an extensive background in the nonprofit world. Where does your passion to defend and protect human rights come from?
Well, my parents were immigrants, and we always strive to be part of the American dream, the American ideal. And I learned what my mom faced growing up in a strong patriarchy where women and girls were devalued. My mom was not allowed to seek a higher education or pursue a professional career. And she was terribly mistreated. And I also grew up in the segregated South, where I saw the result and pain of racism play out. So, throughout my life, I really worked to give voice to those who were unable to speak out. And I volunteered for a number of organizations, both locally and nationally, and with amazing people like President and Mrs. Carter and Congressman John Lewis. And I learned a lot about effective advocacy along the way.
I love this word effective. I love this effective advocacy. Because when you can advocate for 1,000 things, but if it doesn't actually make any change or implement actual adjustments or transitions from previous oppression, then is it really true advocacy? So I actually like this effective advocacy. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to put that in my box. How was Protect Our Defenders founded?
Well, about 10 years ago, I learned about the severity of the problem from a dear friend and then new Congresswoman, Jackie Spear. And with a small band of friends and a group of trusting survivors, Protect Our Defenders was founded.
I love that. We love Jackie Spears at Service Women's Action Network. I know a lot of organizations do. She works very, very, very hard to implement change within the military. So that's an amazing thing. That's great that you all were founded in connection with her. Can you tell us a bit about the Protect Our Defenders and what makes this organization unique?
Well, it's part of this term effective advocacy. So, over my many years of advocating, I've learned that you needed to do a combination of things to affect sustainable, long-lasting change. And so what we do at POD is we weave together survivor stories, advocacy campaigns, pro bono legal representation, aggressive media outreach, research, and congressional partnerships to drive reform and to create culture change. And we're also a watchdog organization, meaning we call out bad behavior and we hold leadership accountable. And we do that through advocacy campaigns, and we do it through our research reports. Like last year, we produced our second in a series of reports called Racial Disparities in Military Justice, where we demonstrated through data how the military has a racial disparity problem, that if you're accused of a crime and you happen to be Black, you're more likely to be convicted, or you're more likely to be prosecuted. You're more likely to be given Article 15, or non-judicial punishment if you happen to be Black. And so we thought that even though we are a victims' rights organization, we thought it was important to show that the justice system wasn't working for either side. Mm-hmm. And so, and it was part of that effort to make change. And this past year, we and many others were actively engaged in what became an historical moment, an opportunity to lean in hard to expose dramatic racial and gender inequities in both the civilian and military contexts. And so now, at this moment, we're leading this historic movement to press for and achieve true military justice reform, to create a fair and independent system that's both accountable and transparent. And it's sort of one piece of the puzzle that's necessary to create real culture change within the military, so that all men and women who join will be treated equitably and equally.
What's so interesting about what you said when it comes to implementing policy that I don't know if people quite understand is a part of the process when it comes to implementing change in policy and things along those lines, and working alongside congressmen and congresswomen, is the research and data portion of it. A lot of the times it's really difficult to be able to prove that change needs to be made without some type of research behind it to be able to back you up, without any level of data. So just similar to you all, there is this component of making sure that we have, like, the proof is in the pudding, that there's nothing that you can do that anyone can do to argue with the data that we're providing. So it's just very interesting that you point that out when it comes to the data that you all are providing, that it's not just walking up to someone's office and saying, hey, this needs to happen. You have to come with actual, packets of information and documentation and real, like, historical data to be able to prove anything. And it's not just a conversation, it's a long timeline of stages and steps, and a lot of really stepping into some of these groups of people and starting research groups and things along those lines, and really doing a lot of research on the back end, which can be difficult when you're working with the military, because I don't think people realize that either. A lot of stuff is not public information. It's very difficult to access certain levels of information with the military. So this all,
you're so right.
Yes. Yeah. All might sound, easy when we're saying it, but it's so deeply engraved. Like, the process itself is it's a long process. So I just wanted to put that out there when people go and they listen to what you're saying. This is not, a couple months, a couple weeks. This is long, extensive levels of research. And we're dealing with, really, like, brick layer, you have to get behind this, like, brick wall to even be able to access some of the information that we need to be able to provide that data. And there is a train. I hope you don't hear do you hear the train?
A little bit, but it's fine.
Ignore the train, audience. Yes,
that's right.
Close to a train station, and the most inconvenient time this train decides it wants to drive by. Anyway, but yeah.
I think, to your point, our racial disparity report took 5 years of gathering data, and also we had to take the military to court. We filed Freedom of Information Act requests from the military to get certain data. They fought those requests. They fought them in court until a judge ordered them to turn over the data. So it was quite a lot of hard work and a lot of time. So you're right. And another aspect of our work is certain services we provide. Is, for example, as I mentioned briefly, we provide pro bono legal services. So last year, over $1.5 million worth of services free for both active duty and veterans, primarily dealing with sexual assault, harassment, and retaliation. And so, and we also, and after the release of our racial disparities report, we had many members come, service members and former service members, come to us about about racism they were facing. And our data, our reports really gave so many members an unprecedented opportunity to speak out about their own particular situation. So it's a combination of both the data and stories, so people can understand how the data affects people's lives. And we also took years really to develop something called the Know Your Rights campaign, which was that now is published on our site so that members who are sexually assaulted or harassed can read their rights, because often they're not they're not told of all of the rights that they are entitled to. And we also partner with the National Women's Law Center and the Yale Legal Clinic and others to provide veterans help with obtaining care and benefits. And finally, we have an online Yelp-like service that lists local and national resources for family counseling, career services, substance abuse, mental health, and so that we can, within the confines of staying in our own lane and on the messaging that we do, we wanted to, as we grew over the past 10 years, continue to provide as much information and service as we can in a very limited budget with a very small team. But we felt it was really important to be as well-rounded as possible.
Yes, you all are definitely covering your bases from all angles, that's for sure. So it's a power, even power in a few numbers. It's just when people are passionate about something, they'll put in hours and hours of work to make sure that it gets done. I love everything about Protect Our Defenders, because I think, when it comes to the military, even myself in my going on 11 years, being in the Army Reserve, I find that there is this I don't even know how to say it. There is this image that the military wants to maintain, which is this very high integrity, patriotic organization, which it is. But even with being, this patriotic organization that focuses on being, the face of the country, there's still a level of recognition when it comes to flaws, right? And I think that the military, because they work so diligently to put on this very iron steel facade of, above it all, that in itself can be problematic, because then we're avoiding actual problems. I do think that at some point the military will be this, it's never going to be flawless, but I definitely think that there's so much room for growth. But when we ignore or we try to avoid a lot of the systematic issues and the disparities within the organization and a lot of the toxicity of leadership, we're really not allowing ourselves to be the best that we can be for the American people, because we're so focused on avoiding the truth and avoiding the actual problems, because we want to keep this image up. So even, myself being a part of the organization, and I took command of a unit some years ago, and, we had our issues within my unit, and I had to deal with, okay, as a commander, I have to answer to my battalion commander. So of course you want to have this, my unit's the best unit in the battalion. We do everything great, but how is that helping soldiers? How is that really getting down to being the best unit that we actually can be, if we're trying to all be the best by avoiding and sweeping things under the rug? That doesn't necessarily do anyone any good. So I even fell into that trend, and I had to pull myself out of it by saying, okay, this person's complaining about this. I can't act like it's not happening. I need to acknowledge it, fix it. And, that comes with hard conversations that you have to have with your leadership teams, where they're saying, well, Captain Barber, what happened here? What happened there? Hey, sir, I'm working it. I'm fixing it. I not by saying, oh, no, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? So it's really trying to go through and actually acknowledge those things, and being okay with having the hard conversations, and even being responsible and accountable for the things that happen within your unit. People are so focused on appearing perfect and flawless, and it really just doesn't help at all. And even when it comes to big Army, but even down to the lowest level unit or team, it doesn't really do much I think if everyone focused on accountability, we'd have a lot less issues than we have now. But a lot of the times people don't want to take the fall. But when you're in a leadership position, you're responsible for what happens here. You just are. That's what you signed up for, good or bad. So,
well, and good leadership, above every commander level, with unit commanders level and above, is to be evaluative rather than punitive when mistakes are made. And that's what particularly people of color in our report showed, is that if you're Black, you're more likely to be punished rather than even given an opportunity to say, look, you made a mistake, here's how you correct it. And that's why it was important to, as you pointed out, uncover these things so that you can face it, fix it, and get better. And that's what I think we're beginning to see some real changes in the military now. And I'm very hopeful about culture change coming.
I hope so too. And I think organizations like Protect Our Defenders, like Service Women's Action Network, and other veteran focused service organizations, super important to be the watchdog. Someone has to call it out. That has to be the focus. Being able to say, hey, we're not going to let you all slide when it comes to this. We're not going to act like this didn't happen. We saw this, we recognize this. Like you said, 5 years of research and data to be able to prove the racial disparities and in terms of punishments within the military. Those things are important to be able to, hey guys, here it is. Here's the information. How do we fix this? So I love that Pod does this in terms of being a watchdog for the organization. We slipped off topic. I started talking. I started going rambling. I told you I would do this. I started rambling.
Hey, that's what a conversation's all about.
Yes, it is. And we actually answered a few questions actually just within that combination of discussion. So let's drop down to, since 2013, Pod is supported and aligned with Senator Gillibrand on the Military Justice Improvement Act. Are you happy to see Senator Gillibrand revive and spearhead this legislation?
Sure. Well, of course, let me just say, I'm a student of history, and to make lasting change over the time, I've learned that it takes time and patience. It takes persistent advocacy. So creating a movement of survivors and advocates willing to speak out every day, grinding through every day, and also committed and passionate executive and legislative leadership. So in 2011, I stood beside Congresswoman Spear to announce the founding of POD, and as she introduced the first bill on military justice reform called the STOP Act. And then a few years later, we stood with Senator Gillibrand as she introduced the Military Justice Improvement Act. And Senator Gillibrand has been such an effective and powerful, persistent leader in the Senate. Each year for the past 8 years, even when there wasn't a chance for the legislation to pass, she fought to bring it before Congress, but to bring it before the Senate to require a vote, even if we knew we were going to lose the vote, so that we could take the opportunity each year as advocates to press senators to support the legislation. And that's what Bill has built over these years, more and more senators supporting the bill, because it has educated senators more and more each time.
That's amazing. And what is the most important aspect of the Military Justice Improvement Act that people need to know? And why is it, which you'll probably get to, but why is it important to remove commanders from the role as prosecutors?
Sure, okay. Well, its passage will mean the professionalizing and antiquated and biased system of justice, and the beginning of a healthier workplace for all who join it. Yeah. And because you have to have a fair and unbiased system to create a climate that will improve, one's working environment and living environment, as in the case of the military. And why is it important to remove commanders from their role as prosecutors? Commanders are expert in their role as warfighters and in training warfighters. They don't perform surgeries because they're not educated and trained as surgeons. Likewise, they aren't educated or trained as lawyers or prosecutors. And also, commanders often know the accused and are biased. Studies show survivors will trust the system more, come forward more, if professionally trained legal prosecutors are making the decision rather than commanders. Right. And, you know, Senator Ernst said, you know, we need to free up commanders to focus on prevention efforts and foster a climate of dignity and respect. Those are the areas in which a commander can lean in and work to improve the system. And, you know, recently, the chairman of the Joint Chief, General Milley, said, we, the chain of command, have lost the trust and confidence of those subordinates in our ability to deal with sexual assault and harassment. So we need to make a change.
Absolutely. I can speak from experience as a commander. There is implicit bias. Absolutely. And some of it's actually intentional, where, you know, you might have a situation where someone will come to you and say, hey, this happened to me about one of your soldiers. You're like, what? That's my best soldier. How is that possible? Then you automatically go into defense mode, trying to protect one of your best soldiers, but you don't know what they're doing outside of the workplace. You know, you're only judging them based on, you know, what they do for you as a subordinate or as someone that's a part of your unit. You don't know what they're doing in their personal time, nor is it really your business. But the main thing is to remove you from the decision process, because automatically you're going to think of yourself as a character reference and saying, I work with this person every day, all day. They're almost like family. And, you know, that's not really your place to be able to determine whether or not they've done criminal activities in or outside your unit. And like you said, as people that are in leadership, we're not, that wasn't a part of my training. I didn't know how to handle, you know, possibilities of, you know, assault or harassment or whatever the case may be, and how to like go through even like the investigation process and stuff like that. That wasn't a part of my training from what I remember. All I remember is being trained on my branch and what it is I'm supposed to do in terms of unit requirements. I don't know if I remember trainings like that, or at least as in-depth as it needed to be, nor did I need to really receive those types of training that, like you said, should be the responsibility of a third party who actually has that background. So I agree with you completely. What do you think pushed the bipartisan support from senators such as Ted Cruz and Joni Ernst?
Well, Senator Cruz has been with us for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And when I testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee right after Senator Gillibrand, or soon after Senator Gillibrand introduced her legislation, Senator Cruz was on that panel or at the hearing, and he listened to survivors and advocates and Senator Gillibrand and others. And I think from his vantage point, he really looked at it, I think, as a lawyer, and that there ought to be a professionally run system of justice and to remove the bias. Senator Ernst, as a former commander in the military, she held out hope, I think, that the military could fix itself. And with the tragic murder of Vanessa Guillen and the climate studies, the independent investigation of Fort Hood disclosing that there was a permissive atmosphere, permissive culture at Fort Hood for sexism, rape, and sexual assault, I think she, as many others, had said enough is enough. And then with Senator Gillibrand working so hard with Senator Ernst to say, well, what are your concerns about my legislation? How can I adjust it, fix it in a way that doesn't change its principles, but might allay any concerns that you have? So they worked hard together. And Colonel Christensen, our president of Protect Our Defenders, was very involved as a military justice expert in looking at the legislation and suggested changes that Senator Ernst wanted. And together, the combination of worked well to produce the MJIA IPA, that was Increased Prevention Act, as part of that bill. And I think it's a better bill today because of that work.
Absolutely. I love seeing that you all are working alongside Congress to be able to make those changes. That's important. And to have experts that are able to tell them exactly what needs to be put in and put out of these pieces of policy is important as well. So that's amazing. Similar to a lot of our community, I'm sure the same thing applies for POD. We want to be a part of the process. What can I do to help? So the next question is, how can our military veteran community and the followers of our organizations better assist in pushing this bill forward?
Well, of course, active duty, as you know, are limited somewhat. One of the ways we help give active duty members a voice is through our legal services, through their cases. So at the appropriate time and with their permission at times, we've gone public with some of what active duty members are facing. But active duty members can encourage their friends and family to join. Protect Our Defenders and help. Vets can join the pledge campaign that's ongoing now and become active in many ways that are listed on our site. So there are a lot of ways they can. The pledge campaign is an effort to engage every senator personally, one way or the other, through video or through letter writing, to help pass the legislation, to encourage from their own vantage point the special things they can say that others can about why this needs to become law.
Yes, absolutely. And with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, what mental health resources does POD provide, and why is it important for survivors to, with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, what health resources would you recommend that survivors consider when it comes to their experiences?
Well, of course, mental health services are highly specialized, requiring medical staff and medical trained staff, and which of course we at Protect Our Defenders do not have. We provide, as I mentioned earlier, resources such as our online Yelp-like service that can share with survivors seeking mental health care how to access services locally and sometimes nationally. We also do research to expose lack of care issues with the VA. So we help and have, in fact, some reports coming out on that soon, as a matter of fact. So breaking news here on that. But because I think it's really important to that someone, seek care. And so we do what our can, working with partners. We also, we can't do it. We'll send to someone who we know can help. Provide them services or access to services.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that anyone that's going through like a mental health crisis or something along those lines where they are needing assistance, Protect Our Defenders has, suggested resources. And then also, just to be able to throw that in there, SWAN also does have our resource portal where you can go through and research specific local therapies and things along those lines for people that specialize in those particular services. We're not a mental health services organization. Just want to make sure I clear that up, but that we do have recommended resources on both websites for anyone that is going through something. We do like to spend this month, especially being able to talk through, the mental health awareness, being able to talk through the things that we believe our experiences, especially for those that have gone through active duty or have had their own fair share of trauma within the military. So I like this month in particular because I think it kind of, it almost in a way normalizes, people that are experiencing these crises. Because I feel like one thing that this brushing it under the rug is another similar thing. It's very hard to be able to acknowledge your issues if we don't acknowledge that there are other people that might be experiencing the same thing. So I think it's trying to normalize that there are things that happen to you. And when those things happen, there are resources out there for you. So that's
No, I agree. It is so important for someone to seek help, and we seek professional medical help if our physical body needs care or repair. The same is true for mental health. Our mental health when it is at risk. So it's really important, and there is a lot of stigma associated with mental health, PTSD, military sexual trauma, all these issues. And so the more we talk about them, the more we share the experience, I think it'll help others come forward and hopefully seek help, because professional help is, the way to go.
Absolutely. And reminding people that you're not alone, that there's a community here for you when you're going through those things. That's absolutely true. And I think we're going to close out with our last question. So for our members listening, how can they get involved in your organization? And what does membership in the Protect Our Defenders organization look like? What does that support look like?
Well, becoming a member is free. You just have to sign up. You join the Defenders League on our site if you're a survivor or a family member of a survivor, or you can join other aspects of the organization free also. You receive newsletters and breaking news updates. If there's a piece of legislation we need your help with, because it does matter tremendously when legislators hear from individuals, and particularly when they share their story, their experience. And so we provide those kinds of updates and breaking news about issues of concern, are topical, and also, become active, join advocacy campaigns like the current one ongoing. And to learn more, all you have to do is go to our homepage, and under About, click Get Involved. And it shows you shows you the active pledge campaign now and other ways in which you can get involved.
That's amazing, Nancy. Well, thank you so much. We're so happy to have you a part of our May Fireside chat. This was very exciting. If in fact anyone wants to just reach out, and I know you tapped on the website, but if they want to get in contact with Protect Our Defenders, follow you on social media, what are the platforms that they can go to?
Well, we're on Facebook and Twitter and all the social media platforms, and you can find those, it's protectourdefenders.com is our website. And if you want to reach out personally, if you go info@protectourdefenders.com, you can email. Our staff gets those emails and distributes them to, myself or Colonel Christensen or any of the appropriate staff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We really, really, really appreciate your time. And you all know where to find Protect Our Defenders information. And that is the end of our May Fireside chat. Thank you all so much.
Great. Bye, everybody.